There are a lot of people who have just picked up Squad as it's left early access, and a lot of them will have the same questions on their mind. How do I play this game well? How do I improve? How can I get better? How can I have more intense gunfights? How can I do all of these things that give me this action-packed experience that I see from other people? As well as more fundamental questions about how the game functions. Well, today in this video folks, I've decided to bring you a full rundown guide of Squad. If you're new to the game, or if you're somebody who's getting back into the game, all of this information is going to be incredibly useful for you. I'm going to try and keep everything concise, and in some places where there's something that has a lot of depth and detail, I will show you how to get around there. Squad is in its essence a team-based shooter. You should always be working with somebody, you should always be in a squad, and you should always be listening to orders as they come through the line. Now, I don't recommend anybody who's new to the game squad leads, as it's a relatively demanding role and requires some knowledge of the game as well as some knowledge of the maps in play. And as just a regular infantryman or somebody using a fire loadout such as a machine gun, light AT, grenadier, sniper rifle, or any of those various loadouts, ultimately your job is to stick together with your team and always have focused and emphasis on either the defensive objective or the attacking objective. There are three, I would say, major modes in Squad. There is Random, Advanced and Secure, Advanced and Secure, and Invasion. Random, Advanced and Secure allows you to capture objectives flag by flag until you reach a gridlock between the two factions where you have to attack and defend and try and get a foothold with the flag captures. Random, Advanced and Secure is slightly different from regular Advanced and Secure because on Random, Advanced and Secure the map's flags only appear as you capture each objective, meaning that the placement of those flags is in itself random and can create more unique scenarios. In regular Advanced and Secure, the flags are already predetermined on the map and you can see them right away. Finally, on Invasion, it's a simple case of attack and defend, objective by objective, and if you wipe out all of the objectives on the enemy team, you win the game, and if you defend all the objectives, you win the game. So stick with your teammates, work with your squad leader, and fundamentally you will have a relatively enjoyable time. Each unit in a squad has individual roles. Even somebody with a basic rifleman kit has an ammo bag which can be vital to taking out vehicles and resupplying medics. So even if you're taking a relatively basic role, chances are you have a critical component to play in the overall battle for your team. Squad is also a movement game first and a shooter game second. And what I mean by this is that in Squad you're more likely to be punished for your movement than you are for the accuracy of your weapon. Squad is a game where limited stamina and limited movement speed means that you have to move from cover to cover, and if your moving process between objectives and between areas of land isn't a methodical thought process, then you will be punished for it. Too often in Squad you'll see people running out in the open, not thinking about what cover they have available to them or what concealment they have available to them, or running over cliffs or skylining on a building, or just making themselves incredibly obvious in any given scenario. In Squad, you should treat it as though somebody is always trying to watch you. You don't know if that's the case, but chances are 9 times out of 10, there will be some kind of eyes looking towards your direction, and a single bit of movement that isn't in cover or concealment will most likely get punished for, and most likely result in you being killed. I highly recommend always moving cover to cover and always trying to regain stamina where possible. You can regain stamina faster by crouching, proning, and not moving at all, rather than simply running or walking. This is a great way to bound between different layers of cover and concealment, and is less likely to get you killed due to the faster movement speed. But don't think that your character is necessarily fast. You will in very few scenarios be able to outrun a bullet if you're out in the open, so do your best to avoid those kinds of scenarios. And if you do get shot at, well, Squad will let you know about it, as the game has a very intense suppression system, and once you start hearing those snaps of bullets, the job is definitely to run to cover, move to cover, or try and get behind more cover. Now when I said you'd be punished for shooting second, you still can be punished for being relatively inaccurate. Now, pressing the shift key will allow you to focus whenever you're aiming down sights, and you have to have a certain amount of stamina in order to achieve this. Also, firing fully automatic is definitely not recommended unless you're using a bipoded weapon, because you will be incredibly inaccurate. Take your time with your shots. The person who is more accurate in gunfights tends to win, and the person who thinks about where their shots are landing tends to win. In very few scenarios in Squad does somebody lose because they're simply outsprayed. And I highly recommend switching between fire modes in the situations that you're in. So for example, in long-range engagements to medium-range engagements, I'd always recommend using single fire. But once you're sort of within maybe 30 to 40 meters, switching to full auto is a great way to be ready for any kind of encounter at close quarters scenarios. Some weapons like the M4 will have a 3-round burst, but some weapons like the AK will feature a fully automatic function. There is a lot of recoil on this though, so use it very carefully. Two other really important tips about shooting for new players is one, that the bullets always come out of your barrel. Squad has a full ballistic system. It isn't like Call of Duty where the bullets come out of your character's eyes. The gun itself has a fully functioning model. So if you're hip firing, the bullets will more or less come from the center of your screen. There are very few scenarios I'd recommend hip firing in, but in about 10 to 15 meters it can actually be incredibly accurate if you use it functionally. The second pro tip is zeroing your weapon. Most weapons in the game come with a zeroing feature, which allows you to range your weapon for various distances. By aiming down sight, holding X, and scrolling up and down on your mouse wheel, you can zero your weapon to various different distances. And in the game, it will take a lot of time and experience, but you will learn to be able to use your map, visual landmarks, and other things in order to approximate the distance of targets. You can also request that your squad leader places a move marker on a target in order to get the range for it. Over time in the game, you'll learn to approximate things. I myself, as somebody who's played this game for nearly 5 years now, can more or less tell you how distant a target is. And in this sense, zeroing is incredibly important for landing accurate shots. You can always stay at 100 meters, but if somebody's 300 meters away, you will see your shots fall short. In squad, communication is also key. There are two major ways of communicating with your squad lead and other squad members in order to relay critical information. The first is your compass, and the second is your map. The compass is most important for when you're sticking together. You have to bear in mind that, say for example you are to the east and your friend is to the west, and you call out a contact to the west, or say there's an enemy to the west, your teammate who is in the west will look west if you are far apart from each other. So if you're close to each other, using your compass callouts is a great way for approximating the location of enemies and targets that are worthwhile calling out, such as vehicles, logistics trucks, and other variations of that variety. So try not to use your compass to call out information for the rest of your squad, especially if you're very heavily separated, which you probably shouldn't be, or have a large distance between you. In these scenarios, and for more precise scenarios where there is a visual landmark and you can get the exact location of where something is, such as a cluster of enemies or a vehicle, you should always reference your map by pressing the M key or pressing the caps key. If you're assigned a fireteam leader role in squad, you can actually mark the map by right-clicking on it when you press caps. And within that menu you can place the various markers of what the enemies are or what it is that's coming in your general direction. But for everybody else who isn't a fireteam leader, which is most of the time, pressing the M key will allow you to see the map, and the map works in an alphanumerical code. So for example, A2 or C3 or D4 or E6, these are all various map markers of a grid square, and a grid square in itself is actually quite large, so you will have to be more specific. And how you do this is actually quite simple. If you own a keyboard which has a number pad, it's as simple as using the number pad for the references. So for example, in C3, well, C3 can actually be sub key 1, or C3, key 1, key 2. And what I mean by that is that we're in the sub key 1, so in the entire grid square we're in the bottom left corner, and if we're sub key 3 of sub key 1, we're being super specific and nailing an exact location. So again, just using that keypad is really important. So for example, I'll say this guy is in D4 sub key 5, and that will give people a approximate sort of 50 to 100 meter range or radius of where those enemies are, and in most scenarios that's more than good enough. Now, there are some really important things in the squad that you do need to learn. For example, how to use vehicles, what different types of ammunition rounds they have, how those work, how vehicle optic works, how equipment works, like your RPG, you know, how do you range an RPG? How does a hat kit work? How does a combat engineer kit work? How do you zero a sniper effectively? How do you fly a helicopter? And how do the damage models of vehicles work? All of this is very, very critical information that is important to the game. Time and time again do I see people join a game and pick up a really important kit such as the heavy AT or the light AT kit, but they don't know how to actually aim those things, and they don't know how to zero them to specific ranges to be accurate with them, and they also don't know where to hit vehicles, because vehicles, every single one in the game, has a very complex damage model that's worth knowing about, and in most cases, obviously it is just hit it in the arse and it probably will blow up. But if you want to learn all of these things, then the training range is your best friend in the world. Now, the training range in Squad is not like training ranges in other games. This one is actually incredibly high functional and very, very useful. In the training range, you can find every single vehicle you could possibly ask for and learn how to control them, including the various different seats, because most vehicles come with 2 or 3 seats with various different functions, such as driving, spotting, or firing. You'll also learn the individual keybinds for those vehicles, because you can enable showing the keybinds on those vehicles when you get inside of them. You'll also be able to fly helicopters and learn how those things work, and learn how to land a helicopter and learn how to start and close off the engine, just by looking at the keybinds and just by entering the vehicle. These are really fantastic things, but one of the most critical features of the firing range is that it allows you to test every single piece of weaponry and every single bit of equipment across all of the roles and classes with no restrictions. So if you want to learn how to fire a light AT, or fire a hat, or learn how to fire an RPG-29, or learn how to detonate C4, or learn how to place an IED, all of that is functionally available to you within the training range with no major problems. There are multiple different vehicle and firing ranges, there are multiple different obstacle courses to learn how the movement system works, and these are some fantastic ways that you can get better at the game simply by just going into a simple training range. I really, really highly recommend this, because every single part of this game is rich with detail. More enough that I probably would have to make multiple hour-long videos to simply explain all of those assets in their full extent. And that's something, unfortunately, in the world of YouTube, you just don't really A, have the time for, and B, I don't think a lot of people would actually watch it. So whilst I could explain the complexity of why you have to hit an M1 Abrams tank directly in the rear to blow out its engine, or hit it in the tracks to take out its movement, that is a great piece of information and it's very useful, and taking out tanks in this game is one of the hardest things to do. But all of this is available in the training range, as well as learning how your weapons handle, how recoil works, how to fire over ranges. You can learn how to zero your weapon in the training range because it actually tells you how far away the targets are. You can learn all of these vehicles, learn all the complexities very simplistically in the training range, and I think it's really, really important that you go in there before you take up any critical roles. You know, there are very important roles in this game. For example, the heavy and light AT I think are very important. The combat engineer or sapper is very important because they're capable of taking out not only spawn points but also vehicles. And I also think, to be honest with you, even some roles like the machine gunner require a certain level of finesse in terms of being accurate and in terms of suppressing your targets. And again, all of this is practicable within the training range, and you can learn about the ballistic system in this game and how bullet drop-off works and all of the trajectory and things like that are quite critical to learning how important this game is. As some final quickfire tips for Squad, here are some really important things. The first one I would say is always stick towards objectives. A lot of people say that they never find, intensity or action in this game, which is simply just not true. If you're fighting over the actual capture points, you will see relatively high intensity gun battles throughout most of the game. And I would say you should really learn the shooting system in this game. Standing, crouching, and prone will yield different recoil results, as well as how much your stamina bar is in effect. There's also really important things like bullet penetration and bullet drop-off, and just these kinds of things that I find are critically important to learn, like zeroing your rifle. I highly recommend the training range again for this, and shooting will be one of your best allies in this game, especially if you can get really accurate. My final pro tip for this one is a little bit different, but it's something I feel is really important and often overlooked when speaking about this game. There are lots of really great community servers out there, and these servers tend to be the bastions of good games. You'll find that some servers sort of have a weird quality of gameplay, and other servers will have consistently good rounds because they have lots of clan players or communities who play regularly. These guys are effectively the lifeblood of Squad, and they're the reason this game is so much fun. And honestly, don't be shy about these things. Most of these places are happily accepting more people, and definitely want more people to participate on their servers. Check out their Discord servers, which are listed traditionally on the servers themselves, and try and join them. Try and get involved with some games or some matches, and you can even find really cool events, such as Squad Ops' One Life events, which are a really hardcore military simulation mode. If you're in the UK or in the EU like I am, I highly recommend Royal Battalion, Smoking Rifles, TLR, and Bloodbound. I spend most of my time on these servers, and I always have a really good quality of gameplay. I also regularly dabble on Squad Ops as well over in the United States, just because those guys are really cool too. But you'll find lots of communities, way more than the ones I just listed, and really do try and get involved with them. It will improve the game, you'll learn lots of stuff from lots of different people, and I think you'll have a really good time with it. So folks, that's it from me today, TheTacticalBrit. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video today. If you found it helpful, please leave a like, please leave a sub, and I'll catch you again in another video.